Alright, intros are boring. What is darkness? In our world, darkness is merely the absence of light, but in Deltarune, it appears to almost be material. We see dark, smoky particles emanating from open dark worlds, and the fountains themselves are pillars of something dark. Whatever darkness is, though, isn't as important as what it does. In Chapter 3, we get a little bit of an explanation of dark fountains from Ralsei. But what if it became even darker? Darker than dark. What if you could take away the light that isn't there until we reach the other side? That is the Dark World, Susie. An alternate view of reality through the lens of shadow. In simpler terms, the Dark Worlds we see aren't real. By stabbing the Earth, the darkness which pours out of the fountains warps that section of the light world and creates the Dark Worlds. So what? Is there just a giant puddle of darkness below the Earth? How do fountains even work? Well, I suspect that the light in these super dark worlds, which I'll be calling Penumbra, reference, are two separate realities. The light world contains all of our pals, our Chris's, our Susies, etc. Meanwhile, Penumbra contains purely dark creatures inside of it, like the Titans. Creatures from this Penumbra I'll hereon refer to as Penumbrans, because terminology. If we ever do venture near or into Penumbra, I also have suspicions as to what it might look like. In Andrew Cunningham's Ink Theory video, which you should totally watch by the way, he draws a lot of mentions of water in Deltarune, specifically in relation to darkness, through the shadow crystals, the deep ocean file used in the Goner Maker, fountains and sanctuary panels, to Onion Sand's weird Song of the Sea he hears. So if we were ever to see it, or a part of it, it would likely be a massive churning sea of darkness. And if we were ever to see the roaring, it might be a massive flood of darkness emerging from the fountains. Speaking of the roaring, we know that the roaring will bring forth the Titans and blanket the world in darkness. But I don't think the Titans are inherently antagonistic. Ralsei describes the light and dark worlds to be in a balance. The dark worlds are stabbed into the ground, and if Penumbra is the separate reality, essentially creates a breach between these two worlds, like tearing a hole in fabric. So the reason the Titans attacked our party in Chapter 4 is because after the knight opened a fountain in a dark world, it tore a hole wide enough in this fabric to justify the Titans' counterattack. The Titans immediately attack our party because we're right outside the fountain, so it could stand to assume that we're the ones who made it. What really got me thinking about this is that the Titans' theme is called Guardian, which seems a little bit strange for these harbingers of the apocalypse. Dark Worlds, right. Back on track. We also know that not every Dark World is created equal, the will of the Fountain's creator being a determining factor in how a Dark World is represented. We see the first Sanctuaries darkeners are all devotees to the prophecy, whereas Susie's second Sanctuary produces darkeners who question the prophecy, mirroring her own perspective. Interestingly, both the wafers of the first Sanctuary and the organics of the second and third revere the other's statue forms as their respective ancestors. This brings up another question of how time seems to work in the Dark Worlds. On one hand, Lightners seem to experience time relatively realistically, but Darkeners are a whole other story. In Chapter 2, Ralsei is shocked when Susie mentioned it's only been about half a day between Chapter 1 and 2. And during the fight with Jevel upon defeat, he mentions going to sleep for another 100 years, which, regardless of when Jevel was initially sealed, seems like quite a long time. So, what's the point? Maybe time is a bit scattered, but what significance does this have? Well, you know who else is scattered across time? That's right. I believe that our homeboy Wingle Dingle Gasterton is behind this. Again, seriously, why is this guy behind everything? We haven't met him yet. Whatever. One thing I've noticed across tons of theories involving Mr. Hands here is that he's after something. Usually freedom, which makes sense. If our boy's been scattered across time and space, his natural motivation would be to get unscattered. Think about it like this. If the layers of the Dark Worlds are linear, i.e. Light World, Dark World, Penumbra, and the Dark Worlds are what connect them, then what would happen if a Lightner was in Penumbra whenever the Dark World, aka the link between these two worlds, would be severed? We know from Entry 17 that Gaster was likely studying the Dark Worlds before the events of Undertale. It's also very likely that in his attempts to reach the Dark Worlds, he was trapped in them, likely by the method I just described. Additionally, if you consider Gaster's Twitter dialogue to be canon, then consider the voice's consistent mention of time passing between chapter releases. If Gaster is the voice who is trapped in Penumbra, then it's possible that Penumbran time exists relative to our real-world time, which, for a video game character, would be incredibly confusing to wrap their minds around. Okay, but how does Gaster get from Undertale to Deltarune, and why is he goner makering and possibly eggmanning and whatever the hell else he's up to? Great question here. Bear with me here, but Undertale and Deltarune are in the same universe. Okay, wait. I said hear me out. Undertale and Deltarune are separate realities, however, they both share the same Penumbra underneath them both. Make sense? Alright, bombshell number 2, Deltarune is a simulation.
Huh?
Kind of. Deltarune is its own world. It has its own characters who live their own lives. However, behind it all, big man gastrointestinal lining over here is pulling the strings. I think that our good friend Ghastly is playing a game just like we are, running Deltarune, the program, over and over in an attempt to free himself. But if Gallbladder is such a powerful god of spooky loreness, why can't he just free himself? Because, like the People's Crusades of 1096, some things are just more powerful than God. Like the prophecy. The prophecy is weird, and really freaking vague. Seriously, this thing feels more like one of those crappy Pinterest cooking recipes than a timeline for the apocalypse. Unless it was a recipe. Hear me out again. What if the prophecy isn't necessarily a timeline, but more of a checklist? A series of events that have to occur in order for childish Gambino over here to escape. Think a little love finds its way to the girl. Susie, Noelle, Alphys. That doesn't matter how the Yuri happens, as long as it happens at some point, then Larry Last Breath can escape purgatory. Okay, so that's the prophecy. But who or what made it? I don't think it was necessarily made, more organized by Gal Gadot over here. What I think that Gasher Pass can't create and destroy the world of Deltarune, I think he can witness it from any point in time. Remember the whole weird Penumbra time real world thing I mentioned earlier? But the only way he can influence it is with the help of the... We are the soul. I'm tired of seeing it. My friends on Discord say... Sorry, it's just, we're the only person who controls the soul. But in Snowgrave... Shut! In Snowgrave, we choose to go down this path. If some random third party was causing us to be evil, it would completely remove the impact of the player's choices. But our choices don't matter! Wrong! The existence of Snowgrave proves our choices do matter. Toby has confirmed there's only one ending, kind of. But it's possible that the details of this ending can be considerably different depending on how we get there. Okay, so why is the soul there? And how does this rope back around the Garden of Wandan? Before I answer, we gotta talk about the... Greetings, my theys and thems. Back again with another... I just love the smell of in the morning. It really complements the ominous pillar of darkness. So, the night. Who or what is it? Sometimes it's a marble, sometimes it's a bird. It tries to kidnap Toriel, but then switches to Undyne. It's apparently allied with Chris and obsessed with aura farming. I mean, seriously, we see the fit, bro. Well, let's start with the obvious. It's got horns like a deer, pointing to either of the 4 holidays. Noelle can be comfortably ruled out for lack of motivation, but the other 3 are kind of tricky. Rudy is a little occupied at the moment, but that doesn't definitively cut him out. What would count him out is motive. While you could make a flimsy argument for Rudy, there is significantly more evidence for Des or Carol, both of which who are, as of yet, not hospitalized. Let's do Carol first. Carol has a katana in her house, which, hey, so does the Knight. If we assume that Carol is the phone person based on the phone person saying, "I'll be there soon," and Carol just showing up early, and we can assume that when the phone person says, "Church tonight," that when we see the Knight in the Sanctuary, that it's probably Carol. And also that Carol and Chris are probably in cahoots, like the Knight is with Chris. Yeah, that too, I guess. And biggest of all, Carol has tons of motive. She's the mayor of the town and has been seen around the shelter, like Alphys says.
But I will say, I've only seen a couple of people head over there. Undyne and the mayor.
Which, like the Knight. And most importantly, has a dead daughter. Whatever the Knight's goal is, if Carol is the Knight, then it could be an attempt to get Des back. Speaking of, December fan design holiday has been MIA for a while, before the story even began, and the Knight's similarities are numerous. Holiday horn, sword that looks like a baseball bat, presumably lost in Dark World shenanigans, and from a thematic standpoint, I think it just sounds better. I don't know about you, but Carol doesn't really scream villain to me. She might be cold and a bit homophobic, but her character arc of, "Grah, my daughter's dead, I need to get her back," is about as predictable as Asgore's festival cuckoldry. Des, right. Continuing forward. I don't actually think that Des is the Knight. Completely. The Knight is a combination of Des's body and Chris's human soul. It explains where Chris's original soul actually went, which is something I actually haven't heard many people talk about. I believe that the Roaring Knight as we know it is combined of Chris's soul, Des's body or dust, and a pinch of darkness. Additionally, the Black Knife drops the Black Shard, a weapon that only Chris and Noelle can equip, which would make sense if the Knight contained aspects from each of them. I know Noelle is Des's sister, but there's a connection. I believe in some way, which I'll explain later, that Des's soul and body were separated, trapping her soul in Penumbra to become the mysterious stranger voice we hear in the code, and her body being turned into the Knight. If Des is the Knight, it would also explain Carol's involvement, doing whatever she can to find her lost daughter. I will explain all of this later as well. There's a timeline section. You can check it out. Now what? Right, motive. Regardless of the Knight's identity, their actions are confusing, to say the least. We know the Knight created the Card Kingdom and Cyberworld Dark Fountains. For the Knight has appeared, the Knight that pulls the fountains from the earth, holy fountains, whose shadows are creating a new world. Our world. The Roaring Knight! Today it deigned to create this world. That was a horrible Queen impression, but you know what? Screw it. Moving on. The easy assumption to make is that the Knight wants to discreetly trigger the Roaring, hence why it opened fountains in the abandoned classroom and the computer lab whenever the town's Wi-Fi had been out. Nobody would be there, so it would be safe to assume it could go there. But if that is its end goal, then why not just make a crap ton of fountains everywhere? Chris and Susie both don't seem noticeably exhausted from making their fountains, so why the wait? One answer is that Susie correctly called the Knight's bluff in Chapter 4. If it is a creature that's at least partially made of darkness, it can be assumed that it could spend very little time in the light world without decomposing. As a result, it may only be able to open a single fountain a day, and only at night. The kidnappings, on the other hand, are really confusing. On the surface, the Knight kidnapping Toriel or Undyne seems to correlate to the Deltarune or police badge shelter codes, but the Knight can just open it and get inside on its own. So if the Knight doesn't need the codes, then why kidnap either of the two? Well, to be honest, I think that both of the Knight's targets here were accidental. I believe that the only reason the Knight had to kidnap Undyne was because she had already seen the Dark World, which would have created a lot of problems for a lot of reasons. But why was it trying to kidnap Toriel initially? Well, let's look at the bigger picture here. If the Knight created both the Cyberworld and Card Kingdoms in an attempt to gradually start the Roaring, it would likely notice our heroes sealing said fountains. Well, when Queen tells the party it was the Knight who made the Cyberworld, Chris could then alert Carol, who would decide to have Chris create the TV world as a lure to try and capture the Knight. Now I know, capturing the Knight? It's a tall order. The thing is tanky and hits like a goddamn truck. Well, first of all, Carol and Chris might not have known how stacked the Knight was. And second, Carol and Chris would want to capture the Knight because if it is Des, then they would want to try to capture it to find some way to restore her. But it doesn't really answer why the Knight tried to kidnap Toriel. Phone person, Carol, mentions Undyne as a sacrifice. I don't think this is meant to be as much of a demonic ritualistic sacrifice, but more of a consequence of her finding out about the Dark World. If Toriel was going to be sacrificed to the night, it would seem out of character for Chris to even let that be a possibility. One reason the Knight could be trying to kidnap Toriel was for leverage. If it's trying to unleash the Roaring, then needs the heroes to just get in the bunker already. And what better way to get them in there than by kidnapping their mom, only resorting to Undyne to keep the Dark World a secret, which inadvertently accomplished the task of giving the heroes someone they need to save. We know that the Knight instructed Tenna to do two things: keep the heroes distracted until it arrived, and to keep Toriel asleep in her gotcha prize ball. The only issue there is that we actually haven't ever heard Rory K over here actually speak. The Knight moves almost sluggishly and kind of animalistically, which to me implies that there's something up with a Knight, especially physiologically. Furthermore, if Chris and Carol orchestrated the TV world as a trap, then it would make sense for either of them to pretend to be the Knight to persuade Tenna to keep things in line. Either whenever the fountain was forming and Chris told Tenna, or electronically, though the weird niches of how electronics interact with darkeners is kind of weird. So then what happens during Chapter 4? And what happened after Chapter 3's cliffhanger? To be frank, we don't know what happens after the cliffhanger. It could be anything. We know that the Knight and Chris have some kind of relationship. Whatever Chris is or isn't doing in the bunker could be quite literally anything. As for Chapter 4, there are some ideas. First of all, the Sanctuaries. One thing that kind of seemed off to me was how tiny the first Sanctuaries fountain was. It's the first time we'd ever seen a fountain like that before, so it was clearly deliberate, but what would cause a fountain to have such a great personality? We know fountains are formed by channeling the will, the hopes and dreams, the determination of the fountain maker into a blade. Logically then, a weak fountain could be a byproduct of a lack of said feelings, or maybe just general fatigue. I bring this up because I believe there are two culprits. Before, I mentioned that the first Sanctuary's darkeners are particularly adherent to the prophecy. If the will of the fountain maker is reflected that it's darkeners, then I believe that it was either the Knight or Alvin. Yeah, okay, I know Alvin isn't a fun answer, but he ticks some pretty big boxes. Before you say it was Carol because phone person said, "Church, tonight," I posit this theory. Following Chapter 3, Chris and Carol talked to decide what to do next. They figured that if the Knight was targeting Toriel, then it would feasibly strike during church practice the next day. The Knight's motivations are a bit funkier to pick out. As Susie said, it was hella ballsy to create a fountain in a place as public as the church during what was then presumably choir practice. So clearly the Knight no longer cared about secrecy. Then, as soon as the heroes arrive, it just aura farms and runs right ahead of us, only summoning the Titan when we get right up to the fountain. So, what's it doing? Gauging our strength? Hear me out, sit down because this one goes a little crazy. I mentioned that the Knight/Des is made out of Des's dust, Chris's soul, and, dark stuff. Well, time to answer what the stuff is. It's Friend. Okay, I said hear me out. Image Friend, or Friend as we like to call him, is a spooky little shadow fella who I'd bet my left Starwalker is a Penumbran or some sort of advanced darkener. Their motive is kind of strange, but I believe they are the manifestation of fear itself. Titans seem to be created out of the fear of darkness specifically, so I'd reckon that Penumbrans in general are manifestations of more abstract concepts, emotions, thoughts, memories. Fear and anxiety are some pretty big major themes in DELTARUNE so far. Chris and Susie are both weirdos who didn't have friends before meeting each other. Asgore is a divorced, sad dad who runs a failing flower shop. Carol's missing a daughter and basically neglects the other. And Noelle is... well, she's got some stuff to unpack. You get the gist. So, what would a creature made out of fear want exactly? My guess is to get bigger. I believe that Friend's end goal is to use the Roaring as a means to escape Penumbra and appear in the light world, driving the residents of Hometown insane and feeding off of their collective fear and anxiety. I also think that's why it needs the Knight. If Friend is a Penumbran, then it's possible that it can't exist in the light world without a lot of darkness to give it a physical form. So, it uses the night as a corporeal means of opening fountains for it. Circling all the way back around, the reason the night is only gauging the hero's strength is because we're ultimately necessary to fulfill the prophecy. To get to the roaring, there have to be heroes to oppose it. With all this in mind, here's a little timeline of how Deltarune is, was, and is going to be in the future. Okay, so to recap a little bit, I've made quite a few assumptions here. Death Knight, Gaster's entrapment, and Friend's anxiety-fueled evilness. But what can we do with all these to solve more of Deltarune? Well, if you're willing to suspend your disbelief, yet again, I'll start at the beginning. The very beginning. Alright, preamble time. Once upon a time, the Holidays and Dreamers were best buds. Chris, Noel, Azriel, and Des were all chummy-chum bud-buds, and I suspect that Azriel and Des might have been a wee more than friends. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Bow, chicka, bow, bow. Point being, I think that Chris was the first to discover dark fountains. Through some means, the internet, dreams, or I don't know, something else, Friend reached out to Chris and instructed them on how to make dark fountains. After which, Azriel, Chris, and Des would all play together in the dark fountains of the storage closet, Castletown, and the abandoned classroom, Card Kingdom. Magical adventures were to be had until Azriel and Des started liking each other a bit too much. This, I believe, is the love finds its way to the girl mentioned in the prophecy, which is also explaining why the prophecy girl has a sword and not an axe like Susie, which is, whatever. Chris was clearly not the favorite child of the Dreamers. I mean, God, the kid's shelves are just empty. It's depressing. So Azriel and Des' attention meant a lot to them. Time went on, and Azriel was about to head off to college. Desperate to make things how they were, Chris tried to contact Friend. Under the veil of night, Chris led Azriel and Des into the woods. Lost where the forest would grow, the children followed the tale of hell. Chris opened a fountain inside of the bunker, desperate to spend time with their brother again. But Friend had other plans. It engaged the heroes in combat. Following the creature deeper into the dark world, they realized that it had become a battle they couldn't win. I suspect the reason Friend wanted Chris's attention was their human soul. So Friend struck at Chris, hoping to kill them and take their soul. But Des got in the way of the attack and was critically wounded. Her soul was ripped out of her body and lost in Penumbra. Desperate to try to save their friend, Chris tried to put their own soul into Des to revive her. But seeing the opportunity, Friend grabbed Des' body, transforming it into the night. With no way to win the fight, Azriel and Chris retreated outside of the bunker, shutting the door with the night inside. Azriel lashed out at Chris, blaming them for what had happened to Des. Asgore and the other police, followed by the Holidays and Toriel, soon arrived. The months following became a blur. Chris was critically wounded, and without a soul, they would die. Asgore began a desperate search for Des, and Azriel just stayed quiet. Who would believe anything about dark worlds anyway? As Chris lay dying, they had a conversation with Carol. Initially, she didn't believe them at all, but Chris showed her Castletown, and things clicked into place. It was here, from across the dark worlds, that Gaster would make his deal. Without a soul, Chris would die. So in exchange for a new human soul, Chris and Carol had to promise to free Gaster during the roaring. Seeing no other option, they agreed. Years passed by. Chris would go to therapy to try and process the events of that night, but the trauma was too intense for them to handle. Their scribbles became incomprehensible, layer upon layer. Eventually they gave up, drawing a tree over everything. It looked like there was a man behind it. Or was there? Not too important, not too unimportant. Asgore would continue his search. Despite being ordered to give up years ago, he had become obsessed with trying to find Des. He started to neglect his family, and one night after a particularly heated fight, Toriel decided to divorce him. Aware of the futility of his search, Carol acted leniently towards Asgore. After all, it wasn't his fault. How could he find a girl who didn't exist? Years would pass by. The Card Kingdom was sealed and locked away, and the storage closet was left deserted and empty. A girl named Susie arrived and was immediately hated by everyone for her peculiar dietary choices. Noelle hit rock bottom after losing her sister and settled on Birdly for friend material, and Azriel left for college. Then the Knight showed up. Again, opening up its old stomping grounds in the Card Kingdom, trying to accumulate as much darkness as possible in hidden areas of hometown. Carol and Chris deemed it worthy of investigation, and while Susie was poking around for a snack, Carol shut the door behind the two. In the castle town, they met Rouse and... Wait, who is Rouse? Okay, hear me out. We know Titans, and presumably Friend, are made out of these emotions and feelings. So, if this is true for all Penumbrans, then I believe Rouse is a creation of Gaster. Based off of the good memories of Teen Azriel from Chris's mind and instilled with a frankly unhealthy knowledge of the prophecy, throw in a dash of meta-awareness and you have an adorable little goat boy to assist our player's soul in performing its duty. This would also explain how Rouse can seemingly teleport between the Dark Worlds. If Penumbra is a separate reality, it makes sense that Rouse can enter different Dark Worlds, similarly to how we just walk between rooms in the Light World. Okay, so there's Rouse. Blah blah blah, Chapter 1 stuff. Actually, we've all probably played Deltarune. What do I gotta summarize this again? Go play the game. It's fun. Chapter 2 is mostly self-explanatory. The Knight creates a fountain in a place people will be unlikely to visit, the Fun Gang arrives and seals it, etc., etc. Chris, realizing that these fountains aren't random flukes, but evidence of the Knight's action, meets with Carol that night to devise a trap. Assuming that it can only move once during the night, Chris opens a fountain in their home, and while the fountain is forming, instructs Tenna, pretending to be the Knight, to keep Toriel safe. Chris leaves the door open so that the darkness spilling out would be obvious to the Knight, which would be alluring since it would assume that there'd be no other fountain makers in hometown. But, Chris made an oopsie. While they were dozing off sleepily, they didn't realize Toriel made a call to the police. So, hi Undyne. Then Chapter 3 happens, yada yada moving forward, Sanctuary time. So the TV world trap fails pretty epically. Undyne's been captured and the Knight is still out about doing nighty things. Remember before when I mentioned the Sanctuary's fountain maker had to be either the Knight or Alvin? Well, I actually lied. It's neither of them. It's Carol. Begrudgingly though it is to accept, Alvin is a side character. No talking sprites, no talking sound, and you aren't ever really forced to talk to him. Any mentions of his outside of that are mostly from Gerson, his dad. If our assumption that the Knight can't move around in the day is true, then it also can't be them. And think about it. Everyone attends service, except Carol. Then when Chris and Susie are at Noelle's, Carol springs to action and makes the first 2 sanctuary fountains. All is going to plan until Detective Susie starts getting wise to the shelter code and Dessa's guitar. Chris dials Carol and she rushes over to kick Susie out. Back to the Sanctuaries. Assuming that the Knight is after Toriel, Carol's next idea is to try the church during the next night. I hypothesize the reason for 2 different dark fountains is part of another trap. Get the Knight into the 3rd sanctuary inside of the main church, seal the 1st, and wait. Since the Knight can't travel during the day, he'll be forced to stay within the church. This, unfortunately, doesn't go well. With Chris forced to fight the Titans with the rest of the party, it creates an opening for the Knight to escape, either into the suspiciously large closet Chris refuses to open, or back into the shelter. Wait, if the Knight's trapped in a closet, did it work? Is the Knight captured? Did we win? Wait, the chapter's over? Ah, crap. Regardless of believing anything I've said prior to this, there is one thing every Deltarune theorist can agree on. Shit is gonna go down at the festival. First of all, depending on our weirdness level, we'll be either joined by Noelle or the rest of the Fun Gang. Second, the ever-elusive pink and gold Dark World will be explored, And as much as I do believe that Flower King is the location of that dark world, and I really do believe it, it kind of doesn't matter that much. Speaking of Flower King, Asgore is a big portion of this chapter's arc. He was teased with the Black Shard in Chapter 4, and we'll likely see Toriel and Sans at the festival, triggering his jealousy. This is where we'll probably see him trapped in Asylum, dissociating from reality, only to have the garden charred in an inferno of jealousy when he's forced to confront the reality of his relationship with Toriel. Well, what about secret bosses? I believe there's a theme we can extract to predict this one. I think that the secret bosses all represent different stages of grief. Chevel represents denial, being outright convinced that he's the only free one and that everyone else is trapped. Spamton represents bargaining, trying everything he can do to try to reacquire the status he once held. Chapter 3's secret boss is a little harder to pin down. Is it the Knight, the Shadow Mantle, Ram? While they all fulfill different niches of what we consider secret bossy things, I think Ram is probably the closest thing to an actual character we can have. Regardless of who the secret boss is, you can either slot Depression for Ram, or possibly Anger for the Knight or Shadow Mantle, given their, violent nature. Although I'm much more confident that it's Ram, the depressed little outlet. Poor guy. Gerson is actually easy, representing acceptance of his situation as a weird, half-darkener, lightener, corpse ghost thing. And assuming that Ram is Chapter 3's boss, it would leave only Anger behind. And there are a lot of ways we can attribute that going forward. The first idea is Asgore. We know he has a black shard, which could be a similar shard to the one we got from the Knight, or Shadow Crystal. And Asgore would have plenty of reasons to be angry at the festival. Alright, the first idea is Asgore. We know he has a black shard, which could be a similar shard to the one we get from the Knight, or Shadow Crystal. And Asgore would have plenty of reasons to be angry, as we've discussed. Next would be Ralsei/Friend. Some have theorized that since Susie and Chris both have had solo secret boss fights, that Ralsei is next in line. Despite Susie's attempts at convincing him otherwise, Ralsei still holds a very pessimistic and demeaning outlook on himself and the nature of the prophecy as a whole. As we approach the end of Deltarune, Ralsei's probably going to have to confront his perspective on reality. It's also likely that Susie is eventually going to find out about Chris/our involvement with Carol and the Knight, and feel justifiably betrayed. During this freakout, Ralsei could be left alone, or just be a natural low point to give Friend the opportunity to step in and try and manipulate him. If/when we do end up confronting Friend, I doubt that we'll really be able to kill or defeat it. It's a purely dark being composed of our innermost fears and anxieties, and it's not really something we can just get rid of. Like a lot of mental issues, it's something you have to learn to live with. Understand how to manage it and not let it overtake you. We can see this with pretty much every character's arc. Chris's struggle for identity, Susie's loneliness, Ralsei's... Okay, he's got a lot going on. But only by coming to terms with these innermost struggles will our heroes be able to overcome Friend. Speaking of Susie, I suspect that in the normal route at least, we'll get more fun time with her and Noelle. Less fortunately for the two, Carol is homophobic. I suspect that either Susie will somehow not share Noelle's feelings, or do the classical blunder of miscommunicating said feelings, or worst of all, Carol will flat out outlaw the Yuri entirely. But who knows? Maybe something about Des is revealed. In any of these circumstances, Noelle is in the perfect position to create a dark fountain.
It's fairly obvious at this point that dark worlds represent, among other things, escapism. Noelle and Susie both comment at the end of Chapter 2 that the cyberworld is really just better than the real one. I suspect that following her inability to date Susie, and possibly Rudy's death, I mean, the guy's been set up to die since Chapter 1, and I know Tricky Tony wouldn't leave a Chekhov's gun unfired, right? Right, Toby? Right? Off topic. I believe that Noelle will create a dark fountain as a means of escapism. This could be pretty much anywhere, though my biggest suspicions are likely the holiday home, with its pre-existing holiday theming, or possibly even a previous dark world through a new lens, like the computer lab. So at that point, we're in the endgame. Azrael's going to return at some point in these chapters, but he could do literally anything. He could be a party member, he could be the guilty little goat boy, man, that he is, Or, knowing Toby, he could have 2 lines of dialogue and never appear again. God, Toby. Just kidding, we love you, Toby. Please don't ghost us for 3 years. Again. Regardless, we're in endgame territory, where theories become absolutely incomprehensible and logic takes a nosedive into a dark fountain. I believe that the main plot of Chapter 6 is to save our dear friend, Noelle, and assemble the final squad, in codes, to enter the shelter. In the shelter, which, come on, it's Chapter 7's fountain. Come on, it's gotta be. We will do battle with the night. But then the roaring will happen. Yep, from what we see in the prophecy, the roaring seems to be inevitable. And while we do know that the world will be saved, it's gonna cost something. Or someone. While this something could be anything, I think that it's a literal reset of everything. This is the basis of the video's title, Shuffle Theory. Since Deltarune first came out, we've been confused about its similarities to Undertale's world. Some things are the same. Asgore and Toriel are broken up, Alphys likes Undyne, and the Dreamers have 2 kids, Azrael and a human. But some things are also different. Caddy and Bratty seem to dislike each other, and Undyne is missing her eye patch. And then, of course, there's Sans. From the place where it rains, Sans' entire character clicked into place. He was a happy bum of a grocery store owner with a thing for goat moms until the world ended. But for some reason, he remembers. He tried everything to go back, but eventually gave up. Only really caring in Undertale when we kill Toriel or Papyrus, and only taking severe action if we go out of our way to kill literally everything. But how do you reset the universe? And if Sans Deltarune and Sans Undertale are the same, then how does he remember things when others don't? This, I believe, has to deal with the finale of Deltarune. We're the angel. God, Toby has just hit us with it over the head so much. The angel doll in Noelle's house, the literal Deltarune itself. But Noelle also is the angel? Her dark world appearance and religious ties, among other things, all suggest it. So who is it? I believe that it's both. This is where we start getting into weird route territory.
In simplest terms, the weird route is about us, the player, exerting our influence over Noelle, and us, the world of Deltarune as a whole.
I also believe that this is us in a major effort to basically rebel against Gaster, who's essentially just used us to try to escape from Penumbra. But by asserting our own individuality and will on this world, we change it. From the Shadow Crystal glimpses, which appear to be of the weird route, most likely weird Penumbra time shenanigans, Undyne ends up frozen, crisp, handless. I'll talk about the hand thing later. Most importantly, people have guessed that the cutscene in Noelle's room is essentially us creating a means to control Noelle later on by putting our own soul into her. With this control, we, in the weird route, would become the angel through Noelle, using her to create a dark world of our dreams. Unfortunately, we tend to dream pretty big, and it's what starts the roaring. In a regular route, it's possible that Noelle's icy fountain causes the roaring as well, and only by banishing these angels' heavens do we end up saving the worlds. But how does this relate to resetting the universe? Well, remember my metaphor about the barrier between the light world and Penumbra before? If we've torn so many holes in this fabric between realities, then eventually there's a chance it could just dissolve entirely. In this chaotic, merged state, it is possible that with the roaring, people will be granted meta-awareness as a result of their proximity to Penumbra, and thus, its alternate real-world accurate sense of time and space. I believe that in this final ceiling, Susie, Chris, and Azrael, with Sans not far behind, will go through Carol's basement, which is suspected to be connected to the bunker. They have the weird entry 17, sped up 666, times sound as the bunker. Entering the bunker through the back, fighting off and killing the knight. Des has gotta die. I mean, respectfully, it'll hurt, but yeah, she's dead. After Des dies, we'll exit through the front of the bunker after sealing the fountain. But we realize to stop the roaring, we have to seal every fountain. And there's only one left in Hometown that Gaster, our friend, could escape through. The Pure Fountain, Castletown. In this final fountain, Friend and Gaster will both attempt to break through into the light world. And to stop them, we've got to make a sacrifice. To save the world, we've got to end it. Chris's wish, our wish, at the end of the day, was just to make things like they used to. This is going to be kind of another big theme for Deltarune. Surrendering escapism to live in the real world. And unfortunately, that means us, the players, as well. To save Deltarune, we have to surrender our involvement with it. It's the perfect kind of meta message that Toby would go for. We can love the world of Deltarune as much as we want, but at the end of the day, it is just a game, and one day we'll have to let go of it too. Deltarune's world is probably going to be destroyed by the roaring, but our wish, Chris's wish, is to set everything back to the way it was. Creating Undertale. Now, hold on, it might be kind of hard to wrap your head around, but hear me out. Everything prior to Frisk waking up in Undertale in the ruins didn't happen. Undertale is a simulation in the same way that Deltarune is, just outside of Gaster's control, because it isn't his world, it's ours and Chris's. Everyone remembers things from the past, almost like pre-installed memories, recreating the circumstances at the end of Deltarune. Toriel hates Asgore, Undyne likes Alphys. She's gonna lose her eye, isn't she? But wait, if the alternate versions of characters carry over, then what about Susie and Asriel and Chris? Well, we know that Clamgirl in Undertale has a neighbor named Susie with a Z, so I guess that could be her. Or Susie might die. Chris and Asriel are also probably gonna die. Or maybe partially die. See, if we kill the knight, that would mean that Chris's soul would be without a body, and also probably be wounded from a fight. In a mirror to Kara and Asriel's Undertale backstory, Chris's body will die, remember the missing hand thing from before, and I think that Asriel will absorb Chris's soul and use it to create Undertale's world, getting shuffled around in the process. Asriel forgets the events of Undertale and gets reborn as Flowey, and Chris is shuffled around to create Kara. This is also why Flowey, and the player, using Kara's soul, retain the ability to reset. Sans retains his memories because, well, if he was nearby to the world's reshuffling, it's possible that while the world was reshuffled, he might not have been. Does this theory have holes? Oh yeah, I mean every good theory does. And to be honest, my narrow-minded ass can't think of any holes to, fill. So please, post as many questions and constructive criticisms in the comments. I'll try to get to them if I can. Special thanks to my friend Ratinshambles for drawing the cool little rabbit character you've seen in the background, and to my friend Kipwisp for some of the background music
and editing
that you've been hearing. Links to both of their stuff will be in the description. It's hard to believe that chapters 3 and 4 came out a year ago already. When chapter 1 came out, I was in the 4th grade, which is kind of crazy saying out loud. Then I remember being in band class in the 7th grade when my friend Don Draws, you should totally subscribe to by the way, showed me Big Shot for the first time. Deltarune is without a doubt my favorite game of all time. It manages to balance gameplay, music, visuals, intriguing world building, and beautiful character writing all at once. I don't know what it was that Toby ate to have that fever dream, but I want some. With my luck, Toby will post chapter 5 the day of this video, and everything I thought will be wrong again. But until then, thank you for watching, and see you soon.
Driving in my car.